welcome to Elmwood Farm here in Williamsport. I'm Selena Wilkes, and I am here today to tell you a little bit about one of the darkest days in history for the town of Williamsport. It was known as the Rockville Tragedy. This happened on April 11th, 1935. Now, going back in time, in 1935, what was going on in our country? We were in the midst of a Great Depression, in World War II, and President Roosevelt was trying to steam up some economic opportunities for our country. So, here in Williamsport, the students of Williamsport High School were selected to go on a bus trip to the University of Maryland to further their education and to have the experience. Some were seniors, some were juniors, a sophomore and a freshman were invited. Not all could go because they had to have their parents' permission. So there's a lot of intangibles to this story, but I wanted to point out this was a great opportunity for our local kids to get that exposure for the future and what was the opportunities that were going to come to them. And I got to tell you, this turned out to be a great trip in the beginning. Had a great ride down, and on their way home from the University of Maryland, it was a foggy, rainy night, about 11 o'clock p.m. And the school bus that they were in, that all of our students were in, there was 29 students, were at a railroad crossing, and the train hit them. That right there changed lives forever. So this Rockville tragedy obviously affected so many families, relatives, church pastors, the community, and you know, how you overcome something like that? Well, I'm going to tell you, everybody's different in their grieving, but one thing for sure, strong faith and having God in your life really helps get through some of these challenges. There's always a bright light at the end of the tunnel when it's a dark time. And I have to tell you, this was one of the darkest times in our history. And but the bright light came down the road. And whenever you're helping someone or trying to support somebody going through that time, it takes patience, resilience, and comfort, encouragement, and having that faith there is a plus. President Roosevelt recognized this tragedy as the way to prevent this from happening again throughout the country. And one of the ways they did it was to ratify amendment for funding to improve the railroad tracks. If you notice, most school buses are yellow today. The railroad crossings have lights or crossing arms. And during this tragedy, they didn't have those things in place. So if there's a positive, the outcome of this created a safer way of transporting our students from school to athletic events or extracurricular activities. So I'm taking this opportunity to share something with everyone because this was something that was never told much. Back in that day, people didn't grieve well. They didn't know how to handle the emotional and mental aspects of things. They didn't have the counseling like we do today. To put some things in perspective, I'm going to share with you the Kindle family. I'm one of the Kindles. And unfortunately, in that bus accident, of those 14 non-survivors, Leroy Kindle, who happened to be my great uncle, was in that accident. We're sitting here today in the Kindle Homestead where Leroy Kindle grew up. This is Elmwood Farm, bed and breakfast. Debbie Carbaugh Robinson of Williamsport has put together a fantastic book with some nice descriptive details to explain how this went It's a very short, easy read. You can read this in a couple of hours. And for the longest time, growing up as a kid, I knew about the accident. I knew about the Memorial Library in Williamsport, but that was it. It was never shared or discussed in this family's household. The Kindle family suffered tragically. And as the older I've gotten, and that generation of family members are now deceased, it's amazing how stories come out and you learn. I've run into lost relatives, meaning second or third cousin that I never knew. They've come up and told me, Selena, our family used to hang out at your farm for family reunions, but that ended when that accident happened. I'm like, really? So you start putting these pieces of puzzle together, and here, my pap, Leroy's brother, my pap passed away in '89, and my mom got some of his belongings and she put it in the box. It wasn't until years later, I'm helping my mom one day clean out my pap's stuff that she had in boxes in the basement, and I pull out his Bible, and I go in here, and I find this picture in the Bible, and here the picture was Leroy Kindle as a baby. And this was the first time any of us saw an actual picture of him, other than the picture of him in the accident when they had the memorial flyer called the broadcaster. And he is on the second page right here. And what was amazing was we never knew anything. My pap never talked about it. His sisters never talked about it. And lo and behold, the story comes to this. And this is why it's so heartbreaking. It's gut-wrenching. And for those who've ever lost a child, I'm with you. I've been there myself. But it is always a struggle when you lose a child and how you overcome that. You just learn to live day by day with the new normal. But this situation, Leroy Kindle was the lone sophomore on the trip. And when you look at his description, he was an outdoorsman, very smart, very handsome, and he had his life ahead of him. And he was ready to go check out University of Maryland. And he was not even supposed to be on that trip. He had asked his parents for permission. And they said he wasn't a senior, which the trip was really for, but they invited some others. Said, you're not a senior, you're not going on this trip. And that was kind of the end of the discussion at the table. But he wanted to go. Why? His girlfriend, who was older, was on the trip, going on a trip. My pap, his older brother, was trying to convince his parents, let him go, let him go. The answer was no. The oldest sibling was Aunt Missouri. She has to be a teacher at the school, Williamsport. Well, on the day of the trip, she signed his permission slip to go. No one knew that. So here we are. You get the information that there was a bus accident. Well, where's Leroy? He's not supposed to be on that trip. Well, he's there. And unfortunately, his life was taken. So can you imagine the guilt that went through the whole family? And it put the family, the Kindle family, in a very dark time of guilt, loss of trust. And how do you overcome that? And to be honest, the way they handled it, I'm not saying it's the right way or the wrong way. Everybody handles it differently, but you have to remember, back in the 1930s, they had memorial service for all these students. We not only that, we had survivors that were dealing with survivor's guilt, and we lost our best friends. So the Kindle family didn't talk about it. Everything was put away. We've never seen pictures of him. The only picture I ever saw of him in my whole time growing up was in this, until we found his baby picture in my pap's Bible. And you never hear much about the story. It was just quiet. And our grandmother went in severe depression, and our great-grandfather didn't talk much. And it was just like you zipped it and moved on. And, you know, I'm 3 generations later, and I just can't even imagine what everybody went through. But, you know, this is one of those things, at the end of the day, whenever families or people go through a tragedy, you really need to sit back and think what they're going through, have some grace, and help people, support them, and overcome. But in a community like Williamsport, this tragedy really gives an example of why Williamsport community is very resilient, and they really come together when something tough is happening, that real challenge is happening. At the same time, when there's something great happening, we come together. I just think that's one unique thing about Williamsport. And I will tell you, having been from Williamsport and going away and come back, we're a very hospitable little town with a tough, we're very tough, resilient people along the river. But tragedies like this have affected people not only back in the 1930s, but from generations up to this day. And we will not forget who we are. So if you haven't heard or seen anything about the Rockville tragedy, this is your opportunity to check out this book by Debra Carbaugh called The Rockville Tragedy. You can get this on Amazon, as well as going to the Williamsport Memorial Library in downtown. So this tragedy happened on April 11th, 1935, this year, the 90th anniversary. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of history. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in with us today.
Come visit the Wilkes sisters here at Elmwood Farm Bed and Breakfast.
Don't forget to like and share Elmwood Farm.